Hi everyone, I'm Birgit Koopsen. Welcome in this class. I'm a brand ambassador for Gelli Arts, and I want to say thank you to Michaels for giving us the opportunity to show our products. I'm in the Netherlands, and so here it's evening already and dark and rainy, and I think it's perfect weather to do some crafting. So maybe you just want to join me while I'm showing you what to do, but this is also being recorded, so you can always come back and watch it later and create your tools then. So what we're going to do today is create our own texture tools to use for gel printing. And the fun part is A, that it's very inexpensive to make your own tools, and B, they are always unique and nobody else has the same tools as you, which makes your prints also unique. So I think we can switch the camera and I will show you what we are going to do. So we're going to start with making some texture plates, flexible texture plates. And we're going to make them from acetate sheets and self-adhesive craft foam. And this is very inexpensive and very easy to work with to create your own texture tools. And you can create almost everything that comes up in your mind and that you can use as a stamp on the gel plate. So I have a couple of samples here that I made, and you can see that you can make them any shape and any size you like. So I have a couple here. They can also even be cleaned with baby wipes, for instance, and you can use them over and over and over again and use them for many, many years. So let me show you how to create these. What you need is an acetate sheet like this, and you can cut that in the size that you need. You need some self-adhesive foam. It's a craft foam and it has like a protection sheet on the back, and when you peel it off, it's sticky. So very easy to work with. And then you can just cut a piece of acetate sheet and make it a little bit bigger, just a little bit bigger than the plate you want to create. And why do I do that? There were people asking when I made the first video for Gelli Arts why I put the craft sheet on the acetate sheet and then the elements on top, and why I don't put the elements straight onto the acetate sheet. Well, first of all, this is very flexible, too flexible to my liking to use it as the backing of my elements. And secondly, if I noticed when I did it the first time and put them straight onto the acetate sheet, that if I put it down like this on the gel plate, my fingers touch the paint on the gel plate and kind of ruin it. And when I do it like this, I'm able to actually put the texture plate down without my fingers touching the paint on the plate, because you have this little extra space here. So that's basically why I do it this way. So what I usually do is put this part on my acetate sheet. So I'm peeling off this and placing it in the middle of my acetate sheet, which is a little bit bigger, just a little bit bigger than my foam. And then I decide the elements that I want to create. So what you need to create these elements is a pair of scissors. And I like to use an embossing tool. to create the lines, but you can also just use a pencil, just a normal pencil, and a ruler. And if you like, you can also use a craft knife and a cutting mat to create your shapes. And the one that I'm going to show you right now is how to create a texture plate with these triangles, which is a really, really easy pattern to create, but gives like really fun prints. So what I usually do is I take a ruler and my embossing tool, and I'm going to create lines, and I can choose to use the small tip or a little bit bigger tip. And that's going to create the line. So if I use the bigger tip, I get a deeper line. And when I use the smaller tip, I get a very fine line. So I'm just going to draw the line, and maybe it's better if I do it with the pencil right now so you can actually see my lines. So I'm kind of pushing in this into the foam, which will create a texture. And you can vary with how far apart you do them. Make them close to each other or have some more space between the lines. Whatever you like. And I am almost there because this is not a really big area that I need to fill. So just a couple more. Also, there will be a little bit of distance between the triangles, so you don't even need the whole how wide of the texture plate is going to be. It can be a little bit less, but I think I've already have it. Not yet. Just a couple more. And you might think that it's a lot of work to cut out all these triangles, but it really isn't, because there's a trick. At least if you're okay with the triangles not being perfect, like all exactly the same size. If it's okay with you, if they are a little bit different sizes, then there's a very easy trick for it. You just cut strips like this. And you can also here do some a little bit bigger, a little bit wider than others for the variety. And then you just start cutting triangles like this. And now you can just peel off that protection sheet from the back, and you can just start creating a pattern on your background. So leave a little bit of space between the triangles. So in the next row, you can put the triangle in between and the row that is already there, like this. And this way you're just going to fill the whole sheet. And of course, in the end, you have to do half triangles. You have to cut a couple of half triangles to put here in the open spaces. But I will do that. I will just do that at the end, so I can do all of them at the same time. And you can even play with the, how do I say it? When I would, if I would put one of the triangles like this, so you also get the lines going in different directions. Of course, you don't have to do all of them in the same direction. This will also create different pattern on your print. And as you can see, I also used smaller triangles between the bigger triangles. So you can make it as playful or as neat as you want it. Some really big ones. Let's do it like this. And the same way you can do circles, of course, and use your pencil or your embossing tool to create texture in circles like this. For instance, just draw anything you like in the foam and you will see it in the print. So you can see here where you see the pink pattern. That's the lower part. That's what I drew on there, and that's where now the paint is not going. So when I start printing, the areas that are dark here is the paint that has been lifted from the plate, leaving the pattern, the pink pattern, behind on the plate. So the ones that I have here are all just handmade shapes and patterns. Also with the leaves, they are not as much work and not as difficult as you might think. I don't even draw the leaves. I just cut leaves like this, and I just cut a whole bunch of them, and then I take my tool or my pencil to create the lines. So it's not that I draw all the leaves before I cut them out. You have to make it a little bit easy on yourself. So this way you can just create, and I don't know if you can see that it's actually lower, the area where I did the drawing, but it is, and it will show up in your print. So let's just finish this one, because then I can actually also show it to you later when we do some printing. Just real quick, cut some more bigger triangles to fill this up. Of course, you can also use a die cutting machine to cut out shapes. And then even in the cut out shapes, you can do some drawing. So you can actually add something to the shapes that you cut out. For instance, if you have a die cut of a heart and it's like just a plain heart, you can do some doodling in the heart and create your own texture in there. And you can also, if you like, buy, how do you call them, foam stickers. You can buy foam stickers, also from Michael's, and they are foam too and self-adhesive, but they are already shapes. And there are all kinds of shapes from flowers and letters and numbers and hearts and like basic shapes, all kinds of shapes. And you don't even have to cut them out yourself, but you can add texture if you want. That's not fitting there. Let me see. Not there. That fits there. Okay. So you can make it as easy on yourself as you like, or of course, you can do some really nice designs and cut them out with a craft knife. And it's worth it. It's not like when you've used it like 1 or 2 times that you can't use it anymore. It's actually, you can use these over and over again, especially if you clean them a little bit between prints, then you can use them many, many times. So it's worth taking the effort of making some of these tools. Are there already some questions? Because I cannot actually see if there are any questions. I don't know why, but.
Hi, Birgit. It looks like most of the questions are just about like where you purchased your foam sheets from and the acetate sheets.
So what I'm using here is all from Michaels. So the foam sheets are from Michaels, and the acetate sheets are also from Michaels. And basically everything that I'm using in my video is from Michaels, except for a few things that I couldn't get over here. For instance, I will use a hot glue gun later, and of course we have different electricity, so that's something that I cannot get from Michaels. But basically everything is from Michaels, and there are, I think Madison has links to it, and if I have something that's not from Michaels, then there is an alternative available at Michaels, and the links will be provided to you if you need them. So I hope that answers your questions. So here you can see this is my first texture tool, and that was really quick, wasn't it? And it's going to give a fun print, and I will show it to you later when we start printing. But before we start printing, I'm going to show you how to create texture blocks, and they are maybe even more fun than the texture plates, because you basically have 6 little texture plates in one. And if you have 1 or 2 of them, then you can make so many textures with just that 1 or 2 tools, which is really cool. So I have a couple here, a couple of old ones here that I made years ago. And they, as you can see, they've been used a lot. And I'm going to show you how you can create your own. So what you need is a wooden block or a couple of them. So I actually bought this, as I think it's like 2.5 meters of this. And I don't know what that is in inches, but it's taller than that I am. So it's very long, very long. And I just had it, it's not cut, but you know what I mean. I'm sure you know what I mean. I had it made in blocks at the hardware store for me, and I just sanded it a little bit all around, so I would not hurt myself when touching it. So the first thing that you can do on a texture block that I'm going to show you is something that I prepared this morning. I made this morning because it had needed some time to dry, and I made this with the texture paste. It's Tim Holtz texture paste. And I just applied a thin layer, or a little bit more than a thin layer of texture paste on the wooden block. And then I took my Gelli Arts mini printing tools, and I just created the wave shape with the texture tool and let it dry for, I don't know exactly, but I think it's dry in a couple of hours, and it's like completely dry, and you can use it to print with, which will give a really fun effect. And then I have for you to show you some other things that you can use on the texture blocks. Like I said, you can use ready cut shapes that you can buy, like stickers. So these were originally stickers a long time ago, but they are so old that they are not sticky anymore. They actually did have the protection sheet on the back, but I peeled them off because they are not sticky anymore. So I'm going to use some glue. But when you buy, if you buy the stickers, then you can just apply them as they are, because they are very sticky and they will hold really well on the wood actually. The thing with gel printing is that you don't need the numbers and letters to be backwards or mirrored like you need with stamps, because you print on the gel plate, and then when you pull the print, it's going to be reversed again. So you can just apply them as they are. So I'm going to use tacky glue to apply them to my wooden block. That is, if it's coming out, it's not. Why not? Okay, I don't know. I need to find me another one. Okay. No adhesive here, so I'm just going to use some matte medium and apply that to the block. Now I can just put my shapes on there, and when the matte medium dries, it will just act like a glue. I can also just make the shapes fall off the edge. So I'm just going to cut this and put this here. So you can do this with any shape you like and create fun, unique textures. I could even, if I want to, go in there and add some extra texture, like this. So as you can see, it has some extra texture. You can also do something like stretch like this. That's not working. Well, the gel medium is still wet, but you get the idea, right? So this has to dry. Then another thing that you can add to the texture block is something like rhinestones, which will give a fun dot, like a lot of dots in a row. I don't want that on the bigger area, so I'm going to put that on this side. And can you imagine when you have a block like this, and you have 6 different fun textures on one block, and you have a couple of these blocks, then that is all that you have to take out when you start gel printing. It saves so much room on your table. Because I usually, when I start printing with like found objects, I have like big baskets and boxes full of stuff that I have to dig in and find what I want to use. But if you have these blocks with your favorite textures, then you have everything on hand.
Hi, Birgit, we have a question.
Yes.
Some were asking what they can use to create the texture, which was suggested like rhinestones. I believe Nancy suggested nail heads. And someone asked if these type of texture like items damage the plate when gel printing.
No, it doesn't. I mean, of course, you should not put something sharp on there, but if you have anything that's just like the rhinestones or anything that doesn't have any sharp edges or anything like that, it will not damage your gel plate. Your gel plate actually is not as sensitive as you might think. So if you leave something on there for a longer time, then you might actually get an impression in your gel plate, and you will see that in your prints. But if you just print and put this on your gel plate like this, it will absolutely not harm your gel plate in any way. So there's a lot that you can use, and so these are the rhinestones. The next thing that I'm going to add is push pins. Let me see, where did I put them here? Like these. I'm going to put them on this side, and I'm just going to push them in. And I can put them nicely on a row next to each other, but I can also just very randomly push them in, and they will create fun dots on your gel plate, on your prints, I should say. So anything that you could glue on here could you can use to create a texture block from even if you can even put some bubble wrap on one side, for instance, and I will also put some on this side. I will just put some cardboard. Like, of course, you can print with cardboard like it is, like this. But then you still have what I said before with the texture plates, that you actually touch the gel plate when you put it down. That's also a bit of the danger of using cardboard like this. But if you put the cardboard on here and you can hold the texture block like this, and you have your fingers like here, you will never touch the paint with your fingers. So you can actually just glue it on here and then use it as like that as a texture tool. So again, I'm going to use some gel medium, matte medium, to apply the cardboard. As for some reason my tacky glue is completely dry, probably didn't close it well enough, but this will work too. Just takes a little bit longer to dry. So you can just look around and see whatever you can find to use. And I have some samples here that I wanted to show you, like these crosses are the ones you find at the hardware store. It's for when you put tiles on the wall to create the gap between the tiles to make sure that they are even. So you can find that at the hardware store. This is felt and cork that's been used for furniture to put underneath your chairs, for instance, so you will not damage your floor, something like that. And here are more of the crosses for tiling, but then the other way around. So here I've put the open sides up, and here I've put the closed sides up. You can use Lego. This is like from a Lego building plate, the one that's on the bottom. Again, also the craft foam that I used for the texture plates. You can of course also create shapes to put on your texture tool, and you can make shapes like circles and triangles like I did before, but you can also make very organic shapes like this, which gives beautiful prints. And here is some like drywall tape that you can also find at the hardware store. And here are the push pins that I also just added here. So yeah, there are many things that you can come up with that you can use on the texture block. There's one more that I want to show you, and I have to heat up my hot glue gun to do that. So I hope this also dries quickly. I better put it like this for now. And I'm going to put the hot glue on here. So you can, if you want to, you can draw something first and then follow the lines with the hot glue. Maybe it's better to do that. So for instance, if I would do a leaf, let's just draw a leaf like this. And then I can follow the lines with my hot glue and create that texture. You could also just do lines or draw flowers or just do dots or whatever comes to your mind. Are there any more questions right now that I need to answer?
So we did have a few people asking, instead of the wooden blocks, can you use something like a foam core? Would it work the same?
I'm not sure what a foam core is.
It's like a thicker piece of foam, almost similar to a block.
Okay. So it's like the same material as the foam for the texture plates, but then thicker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Of course, that would work with the foam and the foam stickers, but I'm not sure if it would work as well with for instance, the texture paste or with the hot glue. Probably it would melt if you put the hot glue on there. But there are definitely materials that you could apply to a block like that, but just not everything, I guess.
Awesome. And it looks like we had one other question. We did link the tacky glue that you were going to use today. Do you have the brand of the matte medium that you were using in place of the tacky glue?
I used the Deco art, but I'm not sure if that's available at Michael's, to be honest. But I think there is a matte medium from either Americana or Liquitex available at Michael's.
Great. That's all for questions for right now.
Okay, I actually see some questions right now. I don't know why I didn't see them before, but now I see some questions. So let me see if my glue is hot. It is. So the glue gun is obviously not one that is available at Michael's, but there is a link and there are many very fancy glue guns available at Michael's. This is one that I took from my husband's garage. And it works, so that's fine. And now I'm just going to follow those lines like this. And try not to get too many of these strings. And these give like really cool prints. It's very, they will be very uneven, the lines with the hot glue, because it never comes out evenly. But that's part of the charm, actually. I think when you do the prints, it looks very organic. And I like that. A bit stringy, but I can also peel some of the strings off when it's cooled down. So, okay. And I can even, if it's cooled down a little bit, I can even kind of push it a little bit in shape. But not too soon, because it's really hot, like really hot. I'm trying to push down a little bit of the very high parts, because if you have things that are, that are have a different height on your texture block, and you want to print with it, then the lower parts will not show up in your print. So it's you should have something that's quite even in how high it is. For instance, what I did with rhinestones here, I also have smaller rhinestones like these, but they are also not as high as the bigger ones. So if I would put them together and I would print, I would not, the smaller ones would actually not show up in your print because they are not high enough. Okay, so these are just a couple of ideas that you can use on your texture blocks. And now, before the time is up, I also want to show you a couple of prints of how you can use the prints. So I'm going to take out my Gelli Art gel printing plate, and today I'm using the 5x7" plate. And as you can see, I've stored it in the original case between 2 sheets of copier paper. And I always store the plates between copier paper, which is also recommended by Gelli Arts, because if you store it between plastic sheets, you will get air bubbles, and air bubbles will create an impression in your gel plate, and you will actually see the lines of the impression when you do future prints. And to avoid that, just put 2 sheets of copier paper on both sides of the gel plate, and then you will not have those air bubbles. And then I place my gel plate somewhere in the middle of a sheet of paper that has the same size as the paper that I am going to print on. And I'm going to use some masking tape to keep everything in place, so it is not going to move when I pull the print. So why am I putting my gel plate on the sheet of paper? That is so I can line up the paper that I'm going to print on. And if I do several layers, I will know for sure that I always print in the same, have my paper in the same position. So I'm using a speedball brayer. This is a soft rubber brayer. You can also use a hard rubber brayer. It's a matter of personal preference. I really like the soft one, but that's just a feeling. It's how it feels when you roll it, and I prefer the one, but the hard rubber brayer is works just as well. So let me get some paper to print on, and also some paper to roll off my brayer, because I don't want to clean my brayer the whole time. In between prints, I'm going to use some scrap paper to just roll off my brayer, and then I'm good to use the next color. So let me get my texture plate. And I think most of this is dry by now, so I can use that too. This is also cooled down, so I can use that one too. And then we need some paint. So let's get some paint, some nice colors.
Birgit, we did have another question.
Yes.
Someone was wondering, when you were working on the texture block with the hot glue, does it matter that the glue is even? And if so, how would you suggest evening it out? Someone suggested maybe putting parchment paper over top and trying to flatten the lines a little bit.
Yeah, so actually I've tried that, but the parchment paper is actually sticking to the hot glue, so that was not working. I tried, because what I did was I tried drawing the hot glue on the parchment paper and then put the block on top, because I thought then when I turn it around and I remove the parchment paper, I will have a nice even shape. But that didn't work, because the parchment paper was stuck to the glue. I think maybe if you use a baking paper, that might work, but I haven't tried it. And as I said, it needs to be a little bit even, because otherwise you will lose some areas of the print. On the other hand, this is very soft actually, and you can press down the block. So if there are uneven parts, you can put some pressure, and you will see actually the whole image. So I wouldn't worry too much, but if you have like 2 or 3 areas that are really, really a lot higher, then that could cause some problems. But I don't really know how to solve that, to be honest. Maybe somebody has a really good idea, and then I would also love to hear how to fix that. So let's do some printing. And I'm just going to do some very basic printing. It's not about the printing techniques today. It's more just to show how fun these textures are, and all the different things that you can come up with to create your own unique printing tools. So I'm just going to roll out some paint. And I'm just going to make them overlap a little bit in the middle, create a gradient, and then start with the texture plate that I made, the first one. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to push it down on the plate to remove some of the paint. And then I will lift it up and place it back down underneath, and it will transfer some of the darker pink up here into the lighter area down here. And I can see already that I'm going to like this texture. So now I'm going to line up my paper, and I don't really need to do that right now because I probably will do only one layer, because this is just to show you the different textures. But by doing that, if I would want to do a second layer, I would know exactly how to place my paper back on the gel plate to get it in the same position. So here we go. Now, isn't that fun? I think that's fun. And when I go to the next color, I usually don't clean my gel plate in between because I like it if some of the color of the previous print shows up in the next print. So usually my first prints are not my favorites because they are so clean. I like it if there's an unexpected little bit of color in the print, and maybe even a little bit of the texture of the previous print. Like you can see here that there is some of the texture left behind, and as it is probably dry by now, it will stay the way it is even if I put a different color on top. So when I pull the next print, you will probably see a little bit of that texture showing up. So let's roll out the paint. I think I need a little bit more if I want to transfer the color a little bit to the other side. Now let's do the texture paste. That's a fun one. And I can do more than one texture, of course, on the same print. I can also try the leaf. I pushed a little bit too hard there, and I didn't do a very good job with sanding because I actually hurt my finger a little bit. And these are the push pins. How cool is that? Okay, let's pull the print. That's fun. So normally I would not print like this on a white background because I don't really like the white of the paper showing through. I do like white in my prints, but I like it when the white is from paint and not the white paper. So what I'm actually going to do now is print some color, plain color, and then do a print on top with a different color. So I'm going to use a light color for my background, like pale lemon. And that will also show the leftover paint on my plate. It will pull up these leftovers, and because there's a high contrast between the colors, you will actually see the texture of the previous print. Okay, so I'm going to make this a thin layer because I want to pull that leftover paint. If I use too much paint, then I will just pull the top layer and not pull the dry paint underneath. So make sure your layers are thin to get the best result. Well, I might actually leave it like this because I like it. No, I'm going to do an extra layer on top. As you can see, when you pull your dried paint from the plate with a thin layer of new color, you also clean your plate like in one go, and you don't need baby wipes or whatever to clean your plate. I'm going to do the magenta on top because I think that's a really nice combination with the yellow, and maybe I'm going to even add like one of my favorites, Prussian blue. And that might be a little bit too much paint. If I have the idea that I have too much paint on my plate to create a nice print, I will actually roll it off. And to make sure I get a nice print. And my, how do you call it? My cleanup paper, my roll-off paper, is also going to be used in future projects because sometimes the roll of paper is even more beautiful than the actual print, funny enough. We have not used the numbers yet, so let's do some numbers. And we also have not used the rhinestones, so let's also do some rhinestones. And some cardboard. Crazy prints. These are going to be crazy prints, but it's just to show you the possibilities. So I'm going to print this on top of this one. And I'm going to line up my paper. Now I'm not sure what the bottom side was. I could have marked the paper so I would know what the bottom is, but not that important in this one. Yeah, love it. So you can see that everywhere where I lifted up paint with my texture tool, there's now a yellow color instead of the white. So that's, for me, that's a very significant difference between liking it and liking it less. So usually I build up layers when I print. I hardly ever use only one layer. Let me see, have we used everything that I created? I think so, but let's also do some of the organic shapes because I like how they look. Where are they? Here, something like this. So these blocks have been used over and over and over and over. And I think I made these like 4 years ago or something. So they last a long time. Okay, I'm going to do one more print and then I'm going to give you the opportunity to ask some more questions. And again, I need my layer to be thin because I want to pull up that leftover paint that was still on the plate. What you can also do, especially with the foam, with the texture plates and the foam on the texture blocks, is using them as if they are foam stamps. So you can, instead of lifting up paint from the plate, you can actually add paint as if it were a stamp. So what I can do is put one color on the plate and another color on my texture plate or my texture block, and apply that extra color in the color on my plate and then pull the print. Let's try that. Let's just see what happens. I'm going to roll out a little bit of paint here at the sides to put on my texture block, and a lighter color. I'm going to put a lighter color on the plate. Of the excess paint, and then I'm going to use my brayer to apply paint to my texture block.
Birgit, someone was asking how you created that O shape that you're using.
Oh, I'm going to show you right after I made this print. So, okay, that didn't really work out the way I hoped, because, and I can tell you why, because I used too much paint. There was too much paint on my plate. And when I pushed my shape in there, the paint kind of mixed instead of leaving the darker color on top. So that's why. But you can see kind of the organic shape, right? And I really like that. So I have another one here, which is also that kind of organic shape. And that's really easy to create. So what I did is I took a piece of craft foam. Just going to put this aside. And my pencil, where did I leave my pencil? Here. So I'm just going to draw this shape like this. Oops, that's not really wide enough, but you can make it a little bit wider. Maybe it would actually work. And then I use my pencil or my embossing tool to make these lines. And also here, you have to use the tip to make the impression. If you do it like this, then you will not get in deep enough into the foam. That's also why I really like to use that embossing tool, because the little ball here enables you to push it in really deep to get a really deep impression, which will give you a better print.
And there's just about a minute left, but someone was asking if you prefer to do these projects with acrylic paint or inks.
This with the texture blocks and well, with the texture blocks with acrylic paint. The foam can also be used very well with ink, but ink is not lifting very well with, for instance, rhinestones. They are too smooth, I think, to actually pick up the ink from the plate. So I assume that we are not allowed to go over the hour, but I was just saying, so you draw this and then you use a craft knife or your scissors to just cut it out, and then you apply it to your block, and that's how you create these shapes. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope we will see you back in February, when Marcia is going to do a Zoom live at Michael's with printing with masking tape, which is going to be a lot of fun, because you can do so many things with masking tapes. You have no idea. And then in March, I will be back with packaging tape transfers, which is also going to be a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed today, and hopefully I will see you again next time. Okay, bye-bye. Bye.